I was hauling my third case of bottled water from the truck when I saw Patricia Henderson marching across my front lawn like she owned the place. Clipboard clutched against her chest, and that familiar scowl carved into her face. Living in Pinewood Heights, a planned community just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, meant dealing with an HOA. But I had never imagined it would mean dealing with someone like Patricia. She was the vice president of our homeowners association, a position she wielded like a weapon against anyone who dared to paint their mailbox the wrong shade of beige or leave their trash cans visible past 9 in the morning. At 53 years old, with her severely cut blonde bob and collection of pastel cardigans, she looked like every stereotype of a suburban busybody come to life. Hurricane Delilah was barreling toward the Carolina coast, projected to make landfall within 48 hours. The meteorologists were calling it a Category 4, possibly 5, and everyone with half a brain was preparing for the worst. I had spent the entire morning at 3 different stores, loading up on water, batteries, canned goods, tarps, sandbags, a generator, fuel, flashlights, first aid supplies, and everything else I could think of. My garage looked like a disaster relief warehouse, and I was proud of it. Isaac. Patricia called out, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Isaac Irving, I need to speak with you immediately. I set down the water case and wiped the sweat from my forehead. It was late August, and the humidity was oppressive, the kind of thick air that warned of the storm brewing offshore. What can I do for you, Patricia? She stopped at the edge of my driveway, her sensible flats planted firmly on the concrete. I've been conducting an assessment of the neighborhood's storm preparedness, and I couldn't help but notice your excessive accumulation of supplies. I blinked at her. Excessive? Patricia, there's a massive hurricane coming. This is what responsible people do. The HOA has protocols for emergency situations, she said, consulting her clipboard. According to Article 7, Section 3 of our bylaws, all residents must maintain aesthetic standards even during emergency preparedness activities. Your garage door has been open for over 2 hours, and the visible clutter is creating an eyesore for the community. You're worried about aesthetics right now. I could feel my blood pressure rising. Patricia, we might lose power for weeks. People could get hurt or worse. She pursed her lips. Be that as it may, the rules exist for a reason. Furthermore, I'm here on behalf of the HOA board to request that you share your supplies with the Community Supply Depot. We're establishing a centralized location at my residence where I'll be managing the distribution of resources to ensure everyone gets their fair share. I stared at her for a long moment, trying to process what I was hearing. You want me to give you my storm supplies, the ones I just spent 8 hours and nearly $2,000 collecting? Not give, Isaac. Share. It's what neighbors do. We're a community, and in times of crisis, we need to work together. I've already spoken with several other residents who have agreed to contribute. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. I knew Patricia well enough after 3 years in this neighborhood to recognize when she was running one of her power plays. Who exactly agreed to this? That's confidential HOA business, she said primly. Now, I'll need you to load at least half of your supplies into my SUV. I'm parked right across the street. No, the word hung in the humid air between us. Patricia's eyes widened slightly, as if she couldn't quite believe what she had heard. Excuse me, I said. No, Patricia. I bought these supplies for my household. If other people needed help, they should have asked me directly, not sent you to demand I hand everything over. Her face flushed red. This is incredibly selfish behavior, Isaac. I'm disappointed but not surprised. You've always been difficult when it comes to HOA matters. Remember last spring when you refused to replace your mailbox post because it was 3 inches shorter than regulation? It was 4 inches, and the regulation itself was arbitrary nonsense that you pushed through at a meeting where only 6 people showed up. The bylaws are the bylaws, she snapped. And right now, the bylaws give me the authority to ensure community welfare during emergencies. If you refuse to cooperate, I'll have no choice but to levy fines and possibly pursue further action. I crossed my arms. You know what, Patricia? Do whatever you need to do, but my supplies stay with me. If any of my neighbors need help, my door is open, but I'm not giving you anything to lord over people. Her expression shifted from anger to something calculating. We'll see about that. The board will hear about this, and trust me, Isaac, you're going to regret this decision. She spun on her heel and stalked back across my lawn, leaving heel prints in the grass that I knew she would probably try to find me for later. I watched her climb into her white Lexus SUV and drive off, probably to harass some other poor soul into surrendering their hurricane supplies. I finished unloading my truck, my mind racing. I knew Patricia well enough to know she wouldn't let this go. She thrived on control, on being the person everyone had to come to for permission and resources. The idea of someone in the neighborhood being self-sufficient, not needing her approval or her help, probably drove her crazy. As I was organizing the last of the supplies in my garage, my neighbor from 2 houses down walked over. Tom Rodriguez was a retired firefighter, a good guy who'd helped me fix my fence last summer. He looked worried. "Hey, Isaac, did Patricia come by your place?" "Yeah, she tried to get me to hand over my storm supplies." "You too?" Tom nodded. "She said everyone was contributing to a central depot. Told me it was mandatory under the HOA emergency protocols. I gave her a couple cases of water and some batteries because, honestly, I didn't want the hassle. But something felt off about the whole thing. Did she say where this depot is? Her house, apparently. She's going to manage distribution to make sure everyone gets what they need." Tom made air quotes with his fingers. "My wife pointed out that Patricia's house is on the highest ground in the neighborhood and has a whole house generator. Seems convenient that she's the one in charge of everyone's supplies." "That's because it is convenient for her," I thought for a moment. "Tom, if you or your family need anything, come to me directly. I've got plenty and I'm happy to share with people who actually need help." His face relaxed a little. "I appreciate that, man. I really do. Storm's supposed to hit tomorrow night. That's what they're saying. You guys ready?" "As ready as we can be. We've got Maria's mother staying with us too. She evacuated from Wilmington this morning." We talked for a few more minutes about preparations before Tom headed back home. As I closed my garage door, I noticed several other neighbors doing last-minute prep work. Old Mr. Chen across the street was boarding up his windows with plywood. The Martinsons 3 doors down were loading their cats into carriers, probably heading inland to stay with family. Sarah Bellamy next door was struggling with a roll of hurricane shutters. I walked over. "Need a hand, Sarah?" She looked up gratefully. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she had paint stains on her jeans from the art studio she ran in her garage. "Isaac, thank God. I've been fighting with these things for an hour. They're supposed to snap into these tracks, but I can't get them to line up right." I examined the shutters and saw the problem immediately. "The tracks are bent here, probably from the last time someone took them down. Hold on." I jogged back to my garage and grabbed a rubber mallet and a pry bar. With a little persuasion, I managed to straighten the tracks enough for the shutters to slide into place properly. Sarah and I worked together to get all her first-floor windows protected. "You're a lifesaver," she said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Can I pay you?" Or at least make you dinner once the power comes back. Don't worry about it. Just being neighborly." I hesitated, then asked, "Did Patricia come by and try to collect your supplies?" Sarah's expression darkened. "Oh God, yes. She showed up about an hour ago with this whole speech about community responsibility and how everyone needed to contribute to the central supply depot. She made it sound official, like it was an actual HOA requirement." "Did you give her anything?" "I gave her a case of water and some granola bars, mostly because I wanted her to leave. She kept peering into my windows like she was trying to inventory everything I had." Sarah shivered despite the heat. It was creepy, honestly. She had this smile that didn't reach her eyes, you know. Like she was enjoying having power over everyone. "If you need anything during the storm, I'm right next door. I've got a generator, plenty of supplies, everything. Patricia said we should go to her house if we needed anything. And I'm saying come to me, I mean it." Sarah smiled, a genuine one this time. "Thank you, Isaac. That actually makes me feel a lot better. Patricia makes me nervous on a good day. I can't imagine having to rely on her during an emergency." As the day wore on, I heard similar stories from other neighbors. Patricia had gone door to door, using her HOA authority to pressure people into handing over their emergency supplies. Most people had given her something, either because they believed her claims about mandatory participation, or because they were simply too intimidated to refuse. A few, like me, had told her no, and Patricia had made thinly veiled threats about fines and violations. That evening I was grilling the last of my fresh meat before the power potentially went out when my phone rang. It was Dave Kirkland, the HOA president. Dave was actually a reasonable guy, a middle school teacher who had run for the position mainly to keep people like Patricia from having total control. He and I had always gotten along fine. "Isaac, hey, I heard you and Patricia had a confrontation today. Is that what she's calling it?" "She demanded I give her my storm supplies and I said no." Dave sighed heavily. "Yeah, that's what I figured. Look, I need to tell you that Patricia doesn't have any authority to collect supplies or levy fines over this. I just found out about her central depot plan about an hour ago when she sent an email to the board saying she'd successfully gathered resources from 19 households. She's been using your authority, Dave. She's been telling people this is official HOA business. I know, and I'm furious. I've already sent out an email to all residents clarifying that participation in any supply sharing is completely voluntary and that Patricia is acting on her own initiative, not under board authorization. But Isaac, you know how she is. She's going to retaliate against you for refusing. Let her try. I didn't break any rules." "Technically, no. But she's already talking about calling an emergency board meeting to discuss failure to comply with community welfare initiatives and trying to create a new rule that would force compliance. I'll block it, obviously, but it's going to be ugly. I appreciate the heads up, Dave. Hey, if you and your family need anything during the storm, I'm here." "Same to you, man. We're about as ready as we can be. Good luck." After we hung up, I stood on my back deck watching the sky. The sunset was spectacular, all orange and purple, but there was something ominous about it. The air felt electric, charged with the approaching storm. The wind had already picked up, hot gusts that rattled the trees and sent leaves skittering across the yard. I spent the rest of the evening doing final preparations. I filled both bathtubs with water, charged every electronic device I owned, moved important documents to waterproof containers, and made sure my generator was positioned safely in the garage with proper ventilation. By midnight, I was as ready as I was going to get. The storm made landfall at 3 in the morning. I woke to the sound of wind howling like a living thing, throwing rain against my windows with shocking force. Even though I'd been through hurricanes before, growing up in Florida, the sheer violence of it was terrifying. The whole house shook. Branches snapped and crashed. My power flickered twice and then went out completely, plunging everything into darkness except for the emergency lights I'd plugged in. I huddled in my first-floor bathroom, the most interior room in my house, listening to Hurricane Delilah tear apart the world outside. It lasted for hours, the wind screaming and roaring, the rain pounding so hard it sounded like hail. I dozed fitfully, jerking awake every time something crashed or banged. When dawn finally came, gray and waterlogged, the storm had passed. I emerged from my bathroom to survey the damage. My power was out, but my house seemed structurally sound. I pulled on rain boots and carefully opened my front door. The neighborhood looked like a war zone. Trees were down everywhere, their roots torn from the saturated ground. Shingles and siding had been ripped from houses. Fences were flattened. The street was flooded with at least a foot of water, and debris was scattered everywhere. Lawn furniture, garbage cans, what looked like someone's entire shed, twisted metal and broken wood. Mr. Chen's oak tree had fallen, crushing his fence and narrowly missing his house. The Martinsons' mailbox was gone completely. And down the street, I could see that a massive pine tree had fallen directly onto Patricia Henderson's white Lexus, completely crushing the front half of the vehicle. I waded through the floodwater to check on Sarah next door. She opened her door looking shaken but unharmed. "Oh, thank God, Isaac. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. How about you? Any damage?" "I think I lost some shingles and my back fence is gone, but the house is okay. No power, though. I'm going to set up my generator. Once I get it running, I'll run an extension cord over to you so you can at least keep your fridge going and charge your phone." Her eyes welled up with tears. "Seriously? Of course. That's what neighbors do. Give me about 20 minutes. I got my generator running, the noise loud but reassuring in the eerie post-storm quiet. True to my word, I ran a heavy-duty extension cord to Sarah's house. Then I walked through the neighborhood, checking on people. Tom and his family were fine, though a tree had punched a hole in their roof. I helped him tarp it to prevent water damage. Mr. Chen was shaken up but unhurt. The young couple 3 houses down, Brad and Emily Foster, had ridden out the storm with their infant daughter and were desperate for clean water because their supply had been contaminated by a roof leak. I gave them several gallons and bottles. As I was helping the Fosters, I saw Patricia emerge from her house. She was wearing a yellow rain slicker and rain boots, her hair plastered to her head. She surveyed her crushed Lexus with an expression of pure fury. She spotted me and immediately started walking over, splashing through the flooded street. "Isaac, I need to speak with you right now," I braced myself. "What is it, Patricia? This is a disaster. My car is destroyed, my power is out, and I have 19 families counting on me to distribute emergency supplies. I need to borrow your truck immediately." "No, this isn't a request. As HOA Vice President, I have the authority to commandeer resources during emergencies." "No, you don't. Dave already told me you're acting on your own authority, not the board's. And even if you were, you can't just take my truck." Her face flushed that angry red again. "Fine. Then I need your generator. I have supplies that need to be kept refrigerated, and I need power to coordinate relief efforts." "Also no. I'm using my generator to help my immediate neighbors. Speaking of which, I notice you're on high ground here. Your yard barely flooded. You've got that whole house generator that cost like $30,000. Why isn't it running?" She looked away. "The propane tank ran empty yesterday. I was going to refill it, but then the storm came faster than expected." So you've been pressuring everyone to give you their supplies, and you couldn't even manage to keep your own generator fueled. I shook my head. Patricia, if you actually need help, I'll give you some supplies. But only for you personally, not for this depot scheme you've been running. I don't need your charity, she spat. I have everything under control. But mark my words, Isaac Irving, when this is over, the board is going to hear about your refusal to cooperate during a community crisis. You'll be fined so heavily you'll wish you just helped when I asked nicely. She turned and stormed back to her house, nearly slipping in the mud. I watched her go, feeling a mixture of frustration and pity. Even in the middle of a disaster, Patricia couldn't stop being petty and controlling. Over the next several hours, I worked my way through the neighborhood, offering help wherever I could. I shared water, food, and batteries. I helped clear fallen trees from driveways. I used my generator to let people charge their phones and medical devices. Word spread quickly, and soon people were coming directly to me for assistance. Around noon, Tom came by with some interesting news. "Hey, Isaac, you might want to hear this. A bunch of people have been going to Patricia's house to collect the supplies they gave her yesterday, and she's refusing to give most of it back." "What? Why?" "She's saying that once supplies were donated to the community depot, they became HOA property, and she has the authority to distribute them as she sees fit. The Martinez family gave her 3 cases of water and a bunch of canned goods, and she only gave them back 1 case of water. She said they needed to share with others who weren't as prepared." My anger flared. She's basically stolen from people. It gets worse. Mrs. Palmer, the elderly woman on Oakwood Circle, she's diabetic and needs to keep her insulin refrigerated. She gave Patricia a bunch of supplies yesterday, including her battery-powered cooler. Now Patricia won't give it back, says she's using it for more critical supplies. Mrs. Palmer's insulin is going to spoil. Are you kidding me? Where does Mrs. Palmer live? Tom gave me the address, and I immediately grabbed my cooler and some ice packs from my freezer. I found Mrs. Palmer's house, a small ranch with minor storm damage. She answered the door, a frail woman in her 70s with worried eyes. "Mrs. Palmer, I'm Isaac Irving from Birch Street. I heard you might need help with refrigeration for medication." Her face crumpled with relief. "Oh, bless you, young man. Yes, my insulin, I've been so worried. It's been without refrigeration for hours now. Here, use my cooler. I've got ice packs that should stay frozen for at least 24 hours with my generator running. I'll come back and swap them out tomorrow to keep it cold." "I don't know how to thank you. I gave that horrible woman my good cooler and she won't give it back. Said something about community needs superseding individual needs. I tried to explain about my medication, but she just talked over me. I helped Mrs. Palmer transfer her insulin to my cooler, making sure everything was properly chilled. As I was leaving, I ran into several other neighbors who shared similar stories. Patricia was hoarding the supplies people had given her, doling them out in tiny amounts or refusing to return them at all. She claimed she was following protocols, but it was clear she was on a power trip. By evening, I had helped 17 different households with various needs. My supplies were running lower, but I didn't regret a single bit of it. These were my neighbors, my community. This was what people were supposed to do during disasters. I was exhausted, dirty, and starving when I finally made it back home. Sarah had made sandwiches using supplies from her pantry and brought some over to me. We sat on my front porch, eating and watching the neighborhood slowly come back to life. "You've been amazing today," Sarah said. "Everyone's talking about how you've been helping out. You've done more than the entire HOA has. I'm just doing what anyone would do." "No, you're doing what anyone should do. Big difference." She paused. Patricia came by my house about an hour ago. She was trying to see who had power, who had generators. I think she's making a list of who to target next. Let her try. She's burned enough bridges today that I don't think people are going to be as accommodating as they were yesterday." Sarah laughed. "You should have seen the Martinez family. They were screaming at her in English and Spanish. It was kind of magnificent." As darkness fell, I ran my generator for a few more hours to keep refrigerators running for myself and the neighbors I'd connected. The neighborhood was eerily dark, with only scattered houses showing lights from generators or battery-powered lanterns. It felt post-apocalyptic in a way that was both unsettling and strangely peaceful. I was about to turn in for the night when I heard shouting. I grabbed my flashlight and went outside to investigate. Down the street, there was a commotion outside Patricia's house. A group of about 10 people had gathered, and they looked angry. I jogged down there to find out what was happening. Patricia was standing on her front porch, illuminated by battery lanterns, facing down her neighbors. "I've already explained this multiple times," she was saying. "The supplies are being distributed according to need. I can't just give everything back. That would defeat the entire purpose of the community depot. You said this was voluntary." This was Maria Rodriguez, Tom's wife. "You said we were contributing to help others, but you won't even let us have our own supplies back when we need them. You gave them willingly. They're now HOA property." "That's not how this works," someone else shouted. I pushed through the crowd. "Patricia, you need to give people their supplies back. Now," she glared at me. "This doesn't concern you, Isaac. You didn't contribute, remember?" "No. But I've spent all day helping these people while you've been sitting in your house hoarding supplies. You extorted these from them under false pretenses, claiming it was official HOA business when Dave already confirmed it wasn't. I have the authority to manage community resources during emergencies. Show me where in the bylaws it says that." I pulled out my phone. Even without cell service, I had downloaded copies of all our HOA documents months ago during a previous dispute with Patricia. Article 7, Section 3, which you cited yesterday, says nothing about confiscating property or managing supplies. It only addresses maintaining community standards during emergencies. Patricia's face went pale in the lantern light. "I don't need to justify my actions to you." Tom stepped forward. "Patricia, my mother-in-law is elderly and needs her medication kept cool. You have 3 coolers in there that people gave you, including hers. If something happens to her because you won't give it back, I'll hold you personally responsible." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm telling you the consequences of your actions. Now give us back our property." For a long moment, Patricia stared at the crowd of angry neighbors. I could see her calculating, trying to find a way to maintain control of the situation. But she was outnumbered and she knew it. "Fine," she said coldly. "Come inside and collect your items. But I want it noted that this is a violation of community spirit and mutual aid principles." People streamed into her house. I stayed outside, not wanting to crowd the space but ready to intervene if Patricia tried anything. Through the windows, I could see stacks of supplies piled up in her living room. Cases of water, food, batteries, camping equipment, coolers, everything. She had been hoarding it all, probably telling herself she was managing resources but really just enjoying the power of controlling who got what. Sarah emerged carrying her 2 cases of water. She had this all organized by category with little labels. It's like she was playing disaster relief manager. "Some people get off on that kind of control," I said. One by one, people reclaimed their supplies. Patricia tried to maintain an air of superiority, but I could see cracks forming. Her grand plan had collapsed, and everyone now knew she had been acting outside her authority. Mrs. Palmer came out with her cooler, tears streaming down her face. She had it unplugged. My insulin has been sitting in there with no power, no ice, nothing. It's ruined. $300 worth of medication, completely useless now. My stomach dropped. Patricia unplugged your cooler. She said it was wasting battery power that could be better used elsewhere. Tom appeared at the door. Isaac, you need to see this. She's got a whole bedroom stocked with supplies. Not the stuff people gave her, different stuff. She's been stockpiling. I went inside. Patricia tried to block my way, but other neighbors were behind me and she reluctantly stepped aside. In her spare bedroom, I found exactly what Tom had described. The room was filled with supplies enough to last one person months. Cases of water, non-perishable food, medical supplies, multiple generators, battery packs, even a portable air conditioner. Patricia, what is this? I asked. My personal supplies. They're not part of the community depot. You've been taking supplies from neighbors, claiming it's for the community, while you've got enough here to survive for half a year. I'm the HOA vice president. I need to be prepared so I can manage the community during extended emergencies. Sarah pushed past me into the room. Wait, is that my portable shower? The one that was stolen from my garage last month? Patricia's eyes darted away. I don't know what you're talking about. It has my initials on it, right here. Sarah pointed to SB, written in permanent marker on the water bag. You stole my camping shower. Other people started recognizing items. A chainsaw that belonged to the Fosters. Battery packs with Mr. Chen's address label. A high-end first aid kit that the Martinsons had reported missing. You've been stealing from people, I said quietly. For how long? I haven't stolen anything. People leave things unsecured, and I've been holding them for safekeeping as part of my HOA duties. That's not how property works, Patricia, Tom said. You can't just take things and call it safekeeping. Someone in the crowd said they were calling the police. Patricia panicked. The phones don't work. There's no service. Satellite phone, the person replied, holding up a device. I'm a journalist. Never go anywhere without it. That was Marcus Webb, who lived on the corner. I'd helped him clear a tree from his driveway earlier. He was already dialing, stepping outside to make the call. Patricia looked cornered. This is ridiculous. Over some camping equipment. The police have real emergencies to deal with. You stole from people. You hoarded emergency supplies under false pretenses, and your actions directly led to Mrs. Palmer's medication being destroyed, I said. That last one might even be a criminal matter, given that she could have died without that insulin. I didn't mean for that to happen, but it did happen, because you were too busy playing dictator to consider actual human needs. The police arrived about 40 minutes later. 2 officers in a patrol car managed to make it through the flooded streets. They took statements from multiple neighbors, documented the supplies in Patricia's house, and took photos of the stolen items people were identifying. Officer Ramirez, the older of the 2 cops, shook his head as he surveyed the hoard. Madam, I've seen a lot of things in 20 years of police work, but this is a new one. You know you can't just take people's property, right? I'm the HOA vice president. I have authority over community matters. An HOA is a private organization. It doesn't give you the right to confiscate or steal property. He consulted his notes. We've got multiple people identifying stolen items, documented accounts of you demanding supplies under false authority, and the issue with Mrs. Palmer's medication. That last one is particularly serious. I'll pay for her medication. It was an accident. That's something you'll need to work out. For now, I'm going to issue you a citation for theft, and we'll be forwarding this case to the district attorney's office. Given the circumstances and the value of items involved, you're looking at potential felony charges. Patricia's face went white. Felony. For camping equipment. Grand larceny threshold in North Carolina is $1,000. Based on what I'm seeing here, you're well over that. Plus, there's the question of whether your actions regarding Mrs. Palmer's medication constitute reckless endangerment. Officer Ramirez closed his notepad. I recommend you get a lawyer. The officers helped people reclaim their stolen property, documenting everything carefully. Patricia sat on her couch, no longer the commanding HOA enforcer, but just a middle-aged woman who had let power go to her head and was now facing serious consequences. As people were leaving with their belongings, Dave Kirkland arrived. He'd been staying with family in Raleigh during the storm and had just made it back. He looked shocked when he saw the scene. What on earth happened here? Multiple people started talking at once, explaining about Patricia's supply depot scheme, the theft, the hoarding, everything. Dave's expression grew darker with each revelation. "Patricia, is this true?" he asked. She didn't answer, just stared at the floor. "As HOA president, I'm suspending you from your position effective immediately pending a full board investigation. If even half of what I'm hearing is accurate, you've violated your fiduciary duty to the homeowners, acted outside your authority, and brought potential legal liability to the entire association." "You can't suspend me," Patricia said weakly. "The bylaws require a vote." "The bylaws also have an emergency powers clause that allows me to take immediate action to prevent harm to the association. This qualifies. Don't come to any board meetings or attempt to exercise any HOA authority until this is resolved." I left Patricia's house feeling drained. It was nearly midnight and I still needed to run my generator for a few hours to keep refrigerators cold overnight. Sarah walked with me. "That was intense," she said. "Yeah, I knew Patricia was controlling, but I didn't realize she was actually stealing from people. You saved Mrs. Palmer's life today, you know. If you hadn't brought her that cooler, she would have been in serious trouble. I just wish I'd done it sooner, before her insulin was destroyed. You couldn't have known. You were busy helping everyone else." Sarah squeezed my arm. "You're a good person, Isaac. This neighborhood is lucky to have you." The next few days were chaotic but productive. Power started coming back in phases, with different parts of the neighborhood getting electricity at different times. Cell service was spotty but improving. The Red Cross set up a distribution center at the community church for people who needed supplies. I continued helping neighbors with cleanup efforts. We cleared down trees, repaired fences, patched roofs, and generally worked together to put the neighborhood back together. It was exhausting work, but there was something satisfying about it too. The disaster had brought out the best in most people. Patricia stayed in her house, barely seen. Her crushed Lexus was towed away. People who had previously been friendly with her now avoided her. The full extent of her theft became clearer as more people checked their garages and sheds and realized items were missing. The police added more stolen property to their report. Mrs. Palmer got replacement insulin from the Red Cross distribution center, and I continued swapping out ice packs in my cooler until her power came back on. She baked me cookies in thanks, which felt like an absurdly sweet gesture given the circumstances. 2 weeks after the hurricane, the HOA held an emergency board meeting. By then, power was mostly restored, cell service was back, and life was starting to return to normal. The meeting was held at the community center and it was packed. Nearly every homeowner in Pinewood Heights showed up. Dave called the meeting to order and immediately addressed the Patricia situation. "As you all know, we've had serious issues with HOA leadership during and after Hurricane Delilah. Patricia Henderson has been suspended from her position as vice president pending investigation. That investigation is now complete, and I'm going to present the findings." He detailed everything: Patricia's unauthorized collection of supplies, her theft of property over several months, her misrepresentation of HOA authority, and the incident with Mrs. Palmer's medication. The board had also discovered financial irregularities in HOA accounts that Patricia had managed, though those were still being investigated. The board has voted unanimously to remove Patricia Henderson from her position as vice president and to pursue legal action to recover costs associated with her misconduct. We will also be cooperating fully with the ongoing criminal investigation. Patricia wasn't at the meeting. Dave announced that she had submitted a brief letter of resignation that morning, though the board had already voted to remove her regardless. The meeting then turned to what had worked well during the hurricane. Multiple people stood up to talk about neighbors helping neighbors, specifically mentioning me by name. I felt my face flush with embarrassment as person after person recounted how I'd helped them. "Isaac Irving exemplified what this community should be about," Maria Rodriguez said. While our HOA leadership was hoarding supplies and stealing property, Isaac was sharing everything he had and asking nothing in return. He ran his generator for 3 days straight to keep our refrigerators running. He gave away half his food and water. He helped fix roofs and clear trees. If there's anyone who deserves recognition, it's him. There was loud applause. Dave was grinning at me. "Isaac, would you like to say anything?" I stood up reluctantly. "I just did what neighbors should do. We take care of each other. That's how communities are supposed to work." "I'm glad I could help, and I'm glad everyone made it through safely." More applause. Sarah was beaming at me from across the room. Dave cleared his throat. "Actually, Isaac, the board has a proposal for you. We need a new vice president. Someone who actually understands what community service means. Would you be willing to accept the position?" I was stunned. "I'm not really a meetings and bylaws kind of guy, Dave. We don't need someone who's good at bureaucracy. We need someone who's good at helping people. Someone the neighborhood trusts. Will you at least think about it?" "I'll think about it," I agreed, though I wasn't sure I wanted to get that involved in HOA politics. The meeting wrapped up with plans for additional storm preparedness measures, including a real community supply system with proper oversight and voluntary participation. Several people volunteered to help coordinate, and there was a genuine sense of unity that I'd never felt in the neighborhood before. As people were leaving, Mrs. Palmer approached me. "Young man, I never properly thanked you. If you hadn't helped me, I could have ended up in the hospital or worse. You saved my life." "I'm just glad you're okay, Mrs. Palmer. Please call me Dorothy. And I meant what I said. You're a hero." I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like someone who had done the bare minimum of human decency. But looking around at the smiling faces of my neighbors, people who had come together in crisis and emerged stronger, I felt proud of what we had accomplished together. The criminal case against Patricia moved slowly, as legal cases do. She was formally charged with multiple counts of theft and 1 count of reckless endangerment related to Mrs. Palmer's insulin. Her lawyer tried to argue that she had acted in good faith, believing she had the authority to manage community resources, but the evidence was overwhelming. The district attorney was particularly interested in the insulin incident. During the investigation, it came out that Patricia had unplugged multiple coolers and a small medical refrigerator to conserve battery power for her personal electronics. Mrs. Palmer wasn't the only person whose medication had been affected, though hers was the most serious case. 3 months after the hurricane, Patricia accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 1 felony count of grand larceny and 1 misdemeanor count of reckless conduct. She was sentenced to 2 years of probation. 200 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution to everyone she had stolen from, plus the cost of Mrs. Palmer's destroyed insulin. She was also prohibited from holding any position in any HOA or community organization during her probation. The civil case that the HOA brought against her was settled out of court. Patricia paid back several $1,000s that she had misappropriated from HOA accounts over the years for personal expenses. The investigation had uncovered that she'd been billing everything from her lawn service to her monthly car wash to the HOA budget, claiming they were necessary for her to maintain a professional appearance as an officer. I watched all of this unfold from a distance, focusing instead on my new role as HOA vice president. I'd eventually accepted the position, mostly because Dave convinced me that I could help reshape what the HOA represented. Instead of being the rule enforcement arm that people feared, we became an actual community support organization. We established a voluntary emergency preparedness network where people could share resources during disasters. We organized neighborhood work days where people helped each other with projects. We streamlined the bylaws to eliminate the petty rules that Patricia had loved to enforce. My mailbox was still 4 inches shorter than the regulation height, and nobody cared anymore because we'd changed the regulation to allow for reasonable variations. Sarah and I grew closer through all of this. What started as a neighborly relationship evolved into a genuine friendship, and then something more. 6 months after the hurricane, we started dating. A year later, she moved into my house, combining our households. We joked that Hurricane Delilah had been the best matchmaker we'd ever had. Patricia's house went up for sale that winter. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she was moving to Arizona to live with her sister. On the day she moved out, I watched from my window as the moving truck pulled away. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Anger at what she'd done, pity for how she destroyed her own life through her need for control, and relief that she was finally gone. Tom came over that evening with beer. We sat on my back deck, which I'd rebuilt after the hurricane damage, and toasted to new beginnings. "Think she learned anything from all this?" Tom asked. "Probably not," I said. "People like Patricia don't usually change. They just find new places to be the same way. Kind of sad when you think about it. She could have been part of something good here." Instead, she'll be remembered as the HOA Karen who stole from her neighbors during a hurricane. "And got arrested for it," I added. "Don't forget that part," we laughed, though it wasn't entirely funny. The situation had been serious and people had been genuinely hurt by Patricia's actions. But there was something satisfying about the fact that consequences had actually caught up with her. Too often, people in positions of petty power face no repercussions for abusing that power. The neighborhood continued to thrive. Our emergency preparedness network proved its worth when we had a bad ice storm the following winter. People shared generators, supplies, and space in their homes without anyone demanding it or trying to control the process. It worked because it was based on genuine community spirit rather than forced compliance. Mr. Chen's granddaughter painted a mural on the storm wall we built around the community center. It depicted neighbors helping neighbors during Hurricane Delilah, with images of people sharing supplies, clearing trees, and working together. She included a figure that was recognizably me, carrying boxes of water to someone's house. I was embarrassed, but also touched. At the 1-year anniversary of the hurricane, we held a community barbecue. Nearly everyone in Pinewood Heights came. We shared food, stories, and laughter. We remembered how scary it had been, but also how we'd pulled together. We toasted the neighbors we'd lost, a couple of elderly residents who had passed away in the month since, though not from the storm. Dave stood up to say a few words. A year ago, we faced one of the worst natural disasters in recent North Carolina history. We lost power, property, and for many of us, our sense of security. But we gained something too. We remembered what it means to be a real community. Not just houses next to each other, but people who care about each other and take care of each other. He raised his glass. To Pinewood Heights and to the neighbors who make it home. Everyone cheered and drank. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. I looked around at the faces of people I'd helped and who had helped me in return. This was what mattered. Not rules about mailbox heights or whether your grass was exactly 2 inches tall. Not power trips or control. Just people being decent to each other when it counted. Later that night, after the barbecue had wound down and people had gone home, Sarah and I walked through the neighborhood. The streets were quiet, houses lit warmly from within. The scars of the hurricane had mostly healed. New trees had been planted, roofs repaired, fences rebuilt. You ever think about that day Patricia came to demand your supplies? Sarah asked. Sometimes. I think about how differently things could have gone if I'd just given in, let her take control. A lot of people would have. It takes courage to stand up to someone like that. I was just tired of bullies, I said. I've dealt with them my whole life. At some point you have to say no. Well, I'm glad you did. If you hadn't, I don't think we would have discovered who she really was. She would have kept stealing and manipulating until something even worse happened. We stopped in front of Patricia's old house. The new owners were nice, a young couple with a baby. They'd painted the shutters and planted flowers in the front yard. It looked welcoming in a way it never had when Patricia lived there. You think she ever understood what she did wrong? Sarah wondered. Maybe eventually, but probably not. People like that usually blame everyone else. She probably tells herself that she was trying to help and we were all just ungrateful. That's sad. It is, but it's not our problem anymore. We walked back to our house, where warm light glowed from the windows. Tomorrow I had an HOA meeting to attend, but it would be nothing like the tense, adversarial meetings of Patricia's era. We talk about organizing a neighborhood yard sale and discuss upgrading the playground equipment. Boring, normal community stuff. And if another hurricane came, I knew exactly what would happen. People would prepare, help each other, and pull together. Because that's what real neighbors do. They don't demand or hoard or manipulate. They share, support, and care for each other. The story of Patricia Henderson became a cautionary tale in our community, shared with new residents as a reminder of what an HOA should never be. It was also a reminder that standing up to petty tyranny matters, that saying no to unreasonable demands matters, and that genuine community spirit can't be mandated or controlled. 3 years after Hurricane Delilah, I was still serving as HOA vice president. Dave had been re-elected as president twice, and we had built what we both felt was a model community organization. We focused on organizing social events, maintaining common areas, and helping neighbors connect with resources and each other. The rule enforcement side of things was minimal and reasonable. Sarah and I got married in a ceremony in Tom and Maria's backyard, with half the neighborhood in attendance. Mrs. Palmer, now in her late 70s and still going strong with her properly stored insulin, cried through the whole ceremony. Mr. Chen gave a toast about how hurricanes sometimes blow good things into our lives along with the destruction. At the reception, Dave pulled me aside. You know, that day Patricia came to your house demanding supplies, I never imagined it would lead to all this. You could have just given her something to make her go away. Yeah, but then she would have kept doing it. To me, to everyone else. Sometimes you have to draw a line. And thank God you did. Look at what we've built here." I looked around at my neighbors, my friends, my community. People dancing, laughing, celebrating. This was what it was all about. Not perfect lawns or identical mailboxes or rules for the sake of rules. Just people caring about each other and building something good together. Patricia Henderson had wanted to control and dominate, to have power over others. In the end, she lost everything because she couldn't understand that real leadership means serving others, not yourself. Real community means lifting each other up, not hoarding resources and manipulating people. I had simply decided to help my neighbors and refuse to be bullied. That simple choice had rippled outward, transforming not just my life but the entire character of our neighborhood. We had become the kind of place where people wanted to live, where they felt safe and supported, where they knew their neighbors had their backs. The legal consequences Patricia faced were appropriate for her crimes. The theft charges, the restitution, the probation, they all served justice. But the real consequence was that she lost her community, lost the chance to be part of something good. She had traded the possibility of genuine connection and respect for the temporary satisfaction of petty control. As for me, I learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply refuse to go along with something wrong. Stand up, say no, and offer a better alternative. I hadn't set out to be anyone's hero or to transform the HOA. I had just wanted to keep my storm supplies and help my neighbors. But sometimes that's all it takes. The meteorologists were predicting another active hurricane season, and people were already starting to prepare. But this time, there was no anxiety about it. We had systems in place, trust built up, and the knowledge that we could handle whatever came our way. Together. And if someone ever again tried to demand supplies under false authority, to manipulate or control or steal from their neighbors, I knew exactly what would happen. The community would say no, would stand together, and would help each other the right way. That was the real story of HOA Karen Patricia Henderson. Not just about her downfall, but about a community finding its strength and its soul. About neighbors becoming friends and friends becoming family. About choosing kindness over control, sharing over hoarding and community over tyranny. On particularly quiet evenings, I sometimes thought about Patricia and wondered if she ever reflected on how differently things could have gone. If she had just asked for help instead of demanding it, if she had shared instead of hoarded, if she had served instead of controlled. She could have been part of the good story instead of the cautionary tale. But that was her choice, just as helping my neighbors had been mine. We all make choices that define not just who we are but the communities we create. Patricia chose power and control. I chose service and community. And in the end, that made all the difference. The sun set over Pinewood Heights, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Hurricane weather, some people called those colors, but to me they just looked beautiful. Inside houses up and down the street, families sat down to dinner. Kids played in yards. Dogs barked. Life continued in all its ordinary, wonderful messiness. And somewhere, in a drawer in my house, I kept a printed copy of the email Dave had sent out after Patricia's suspension, clarifying that supply sharing was voluntary and that community meant caring for each other, not controlling each other. I kept it as a reminder of what we had overcome and what we had built. Hurricane Delilah had tested us, and Patricia Henderson had challenged us, but we had emerged stronger. Not because of perfect rules or strict enforcement, but because we had remembered the most basic principle of community. Take care of each other, especially when times are tough. That was the lesson I hoped new residents would learn, that I tried to embody in my role as vice president, and that I would carry forward for as long as I lived in this neighborhood. Help your neighbors. Stand up to bullies. Share what you have. Say no to unreasonable demands. And always, always choose community over control. As I locked up my house for the night, I smiled thinking about the journey from that moment Patricia had marched across my lawn demanding my storm supplies to now. I had said no to her, yes to my neighbors, and that simple choice had changed everything. Not just for me, but for everyone in Pinewood Heights. And somewhere in Arizona, Patricia Henderson was probably still telling herself she had been right all along. But here, in the neighborhood she had tried to dominate, we knew the truth. Real community couldn't be demanded or controlled. It could only be built, one act of kindness and mutual support at a time. That was our story. Not perfect, not without its challenges, but genuine and good. The story of how we said no to a tyrant and yes to each other, and built something worth protecting in the process.